Attention listeners, Aftersight's annual hike is coming up on July 27th.
It was a really good experience for me.
Visit aftersight.org/hike and become an audio trekker today.
That hike today gave me so much courage.
Welcome to Blind Level Tech. This isn't just accessible tech talk. This is technology on a whole new level. We're showing you just how possible it is to live the life you want.
Alrighty, welcome back to yet another episode of Blind Level Tech, or BLT. I am your host, Evan Starnes, and I hope you guys have been enjoying your May. Over here, it's been kind of uneventful but relaxing and enjoyable. So, but yeah, hope y'all are doing well out there in podcast land. And Kelvin, how was your weekend, and how are you holding up, man? And
it's so good to see you, even though I can't see you. It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood, and I'm so excited that you are here. And how am I holding up? Well, I tell you, it's San Diego weather. I can't complain. It is May gray, what we say here in San Diego, where it's kind of gloomy all the time. But hey, it's not hot, and it's not raining, and it's not windy. So what else can you complain, right? Because it seems like everywhere around the country right now is facing really some major emergency situations, and which is what I'm so excited about today's topic, because we're going to be talking about emergencies. I mean, did you hear about all the tornadoes down in the South?
Yeah, and there was a solar kind of storm that I don't know if it really did anything like on the cellular end of things, but it kind of messed around with power grids, and it caused a lot of interference for like amateur radio operators and stuff. So that was crazy.
I mean, if we want to go down conspiracy theories, we could get crazy there, but we should probably just keep this.
We shouldn't
a high level. But what's interesting is when I was going to bed the other night, and I was sitting there listening to this weather meteorologist.
Meteorologist?
There you go. Yeah, we got this. Anyway, and so I was listening to him, and I was on live, and I was just going to bed, and he's like, oh, here comes another tornado. Here comes another tornado. And here comes another tornado. And I'm like, I am so thankful I don't live there.
Me too.
How would I handle that emergency? How would I handle that situation? And I'm like, well, I think we need to build a plan, right? I mean, what would you do in that situation? So you live in Colorado. They have tornadoes there. What would you do in a tornado situation, Evan?
Well, I would honestly be prepared prior to that tornado situation. We don't really get a whole lot of tornadoes here in Colorado, but I would first of all start by considering I'd start with the 3-ring analogy, the U analogy, as you call it, as it's called.
What I think I love about the U analogy, it really gets you prepared in that process. And it gets you ready to think about yourself, you. So let's break that down. Y is you. O is the opportunities for you to be successful. And U is the universe around you to be successful. And why is this important? Because you need to have all 3 of those planned out in an emergency situation. So, Evan, what would you do to prepare for the Y part of you in the 3-ring process? Focusing on what would you need in a tornado situation to make sure you are ready to handle that tornado?
Honestly, I am actively thinking about that. Probably some well, probably information on where the closest tornado shelter would be, or knowledge about like a good place. If I'm at home, a good place to shelter. Probably I'd always heard like a mattress, like you cover yourself in a mattress so you don't get hit with anything. And honestly, I would want to have anything super essential on hand, like on my person, phone, my charger, my pocket knife, maybe, I don't know about emergency food, but just stuff that I know that I could use to help me, function effectively.
Yeah. So let's break that down. What would be in that kit? Because if we're talking about the why component of your emergency plan in any situation. So you live in Colorado, I live in San Diego. Like San Diego, we have wildfires. So a lot of things that we need to be worried about here in San Diego is we need to have our papers ready. We need to have a bag for 3 days. Probably here in San Diego, when there's a wildfire, you normally are going to be gone for about 3 to 5 days. So you need to probably prepare for 5 days of clothes. You need to have all your essentials that you need to be successful to stay wherever you're going to stay. And the other thing that you're going to need to think through is how are you going to be able to make sure if your house does burn down to be able to rebuild your house, or what are you going to do from that situation? Do you have all the right documents? Because a lot of times you need proof of information of that you own that property, or you're renting that property, or anything, so that way you can get back there. So those are some things that you really need to think through. And mostly, this is blind level tech, right? You need a blind cane.
Yes.
Make sure you got a blind cane in your emergency kit for yourself, and that way you got that ready to go. And Evan, you're a Braille user. What kind of Braille technology would you have in your emergency kit to make sure you can take notes? What would you use?
I honestly would, believe it or not, I would go with a slate and stylus.
Old school,
Why,
man. That's old school.
It is old school, and it's slow unless you're really fast at it. Some people are like embossers, human embossers. But the thing with those is they'll never die.
Yep.
And they don't require any network connectivity. They don't load. You literally just pull it out and start writing.
Yep.
Of course, though, there are some, I guess, compromises to that. If the papers get wet, or if I lose my stylus, or what have you, and obviously the speed. But that's what I go with, because you need to have, besides your proof of ownership of home ownership. It's generally also a good idea to also have like your major card numbers and stuff like that written down.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the other key component is, like, for me, I have a little bit of vision loss. So if I have black paper and a giant white marker, I can still see text. So that's what I would use for notes. And the other thing to really think through, and I think when we think about our emergency kit, it's not necessarily thinking through, all right, what we need to help us just get
survival
through.
tech. It's more like
it's more on, I plan to come back home, but I also need to make sure that if my home's not there, how am I going to prove and all of that stuff and be able to do that? And those are some things to really think through. Because like last week, we kind of did a lot of survival things and so forth, and they're all good things. And honestly, if you had that whole kit together, you're pretty well set for any emergency fire situation as well, or tornado situation.
Flooding or any of that.
Exactly. So let's go to the next part, Evan. So what is the next part of the three rings, which we're calling the U?
Yeah, that's the O, and that is the
options. So it's the options that you have available to you in an emergency situation. And I'll use an example here. When the power went out here it wiped out the whole city of San Diego, all the way up to Arizona, and up to kind of Oceanside. Not quite all the way up to past the Riverside area, but there was no electricity. And I remember, this is the craziest thing ever. I was sitting on a pottery wheel, and out of all things, probably making the biggest pottery piece of my life. And I was standing, and my hand was all the way into the pottery wheel, and it was spinning. And I was trying to get this big vase to start really coming out. And next thing you know, my hand's halfway up, and the power just dies. And I'm like, and I'm standing hunched over, and I'm thinking, this is like the piece of my life, like the piece that will forever change my life, right? And the next thing you know, they're saying the power is out all of San Diego. It's gone all the way to Arizona. There is no power, and they don't think it's going to come back until tomorrow. I'm like, well, there goes my piece. But then here's another problem, though. I didn't have an emergency plan, and I didn't have a way to get a hold of my wife. I had a cell phone, but the problem was where I was. My wife was downtown. I was in the Claremont area, which is a couple miles away, and where we lived and where my parents lived, I was in the middle, and my wife was closer to our house. So we had to decide what are we going to do? How are we going to survive this power outage? And we didn't have a plan, and that really concerned me. And the other thing is, I couldn't call her because the cell phone towers were jammed. And the other part is, I couldn't I wasn't able to get texts out to her because it just was not working. The only way I was able to get a hold of her was via email. So I emailed her. She responded back. It was the most weirdest long thread email, going back and forth. So we decided that I would hike over to my parents' house and be there, and then she would drive and meet me at my parents' house, and then we would just stay the night. And since I have their house memorized, and we're familiar, and then there's food there and all that stuff, so we made that decision.
Absolutely.
And it really kind of opened my eyes to understand, did I have a really good plan for that? Was my option for this situation valuable? And so since then we have a plan of what is our options when an emergency happens. We all go to my parent. If you get to my parent, you're in good shape. If you're not there, that's where the issue is. So, Evan, do you have a plan like this set up for yourself?
Well, I'm actually really glad you asked, because I literally had the exact same thing happen to me. Well, not the exact same thing happen, but a very similar thing happened to me a couple weeks ago. In my apartment, we had these ridiculously crazy windstorms, and XL precautionary, they shut the power off just to prevent any, electrical fires and stuff like that. And power went out Saturday and didn't come back until Monday evening. And besides the fact that was a nightmare for here at Aftersight, because we lost our battery backups run out and everything. But anyway, the options that I had at my disposal were, fortunately, I did have some. I do try to at least electrically be prepared for a power outage. So I had fortunately had a big, giant, fat power bank charged up, ready to rumble and ready to charge my phone up. And that thing kept that phone at 100% all throughout the night. And it actually made the power outage more survivable, because for me, there are a couple options I have, and for anybody, there are a couple options you have. Do you just stick it out where you are, shelter in place, or Do you jump ship and go to somewhere that has power and that will have, hot food or whatever it might be? Because, for people that live at apartments, if you have like a big boiler, and not just a water heater in your apartment, a boiler that heats the water for the whole building, and you lose power, enjoy all that hot water while you can, because it's going to go away.
Yeah. And it truly is the cold shower.
Oh man, it's awful. But the options that I had were that power bank. I thought I was going to be able to use one of my uninterrupted power supplies, my big one from my computer, to fire up my Nobody was talking to you, smart speaker, but I thought I was going to be able to use the uninterruptible power supply that I use on my PC. But apparently it wasn't powerful enough to run my electric kettle. And so I had to kind of cross that option off. And that's kind of what you might have to do. If there's a power outage, you might not necessarily know, I can do X, Y, and Z, and this is going to work for me. It might be a trial and error kind of thing, and that's okay.
Yep.
So it kind of eventually boiled down to it. The conditions weren't. The next day, the storm had gone away. We braved it, survived it. There were a lot of downed trees and some downed power lines, and we were still without power until the day after, Monday. But the reality of the situation was I didn't have heat. I have all electric appliances, and thus I didn't have a way to heat anything up or make any or cook anything. So if I wanted to eat, I was probably stuck with junk food, maybe some cereal.
Or a BLT sandwich.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute. What about the bacon? Unless I made it beforehand.
My foster son will eat that BLT sandwich with a raw. So.
Oh, man.
I don't get it. That was one thing. Not for me.
It eventually led to me having to make the very tough decision to go to my grandparents because they have a gas stove and they had electricity. So.
Well, I think that kind of brings me to the idea is when in an emergency situation, your community is extremely important. Because if you have the option, what are your options in an emergency figured out, then you need to figure out what is your community. In your case, Evan, was your grandparents.
Yep.
My case is my parents. The other part of it is the other part to this is the U is the U part, the letter U, and that is the universe around you, and in that emergency situation, and in the 2003 wildfires here in San Diego. It was one of the first times I ever really realized how important it is to be engaged in the community around you and what's happening in your town or city or just in your neighborhood. And for me, I think the 2003 wildfires kind of woke up a lot of people across the country about emergency safety and being prepared for emergencies in a whole different way. And I think that's kind of what changed a lot of things. But in my case, one of the things that I realized is that I needed to really be ready to take in the information and be able to evacuate. And so that's when I signed up for reverse 911. I also signed up for back then there was the reverse 911 was the main thing, and then you had the TV and you had the radio and you had I think email and a text, and so those were all the main things that you had so that the community could reach you in that emergency situation. And today, like here in San Diego, we have the emergency app. And so if you're signing in, when all the earthquakes happen, when the winds are high, when things are going to be a lot of rain. If it rains a little bit here, it's flooding here. We don't know how to
Even a
handle rain.
sprinkle
Yeah, if it sprinkles, the river is already flooded. So
will swamp you guys.
yeah, and so just being prepared in those scenarios. Like for me, my way where I come to go to work every day is on a flood route, and so I have to then find another way to get to work, and so I have to then reroute myself, and it takes me about an extra 30 minutes to do that route. And so it's knowing that plan, knowing the community doing around you, so that way you can have the U part, the Y part, and the O part figured out, and how you're going to implement that. So, Evan, like in Colorado, what are some things that you guys have to help you understand what's happening in the community in an emergency situation?
I mean, it's pretty similar to you guys. I'd never heard of reverse 911, by the way. I don't, but we have, our government emergency alerts system, like everybody has on their phones, and you get an alert, it makes a super loud beeping noise and makes your phone vibrate. So we have that, and we also have NOAA, and everywhere has NOAA. And I'm just going to say right now, I would recommend to everybody, even if you have the greatest smartphone and everything, get a NOAA weather radio, because it can be monumentally helpful, because it you put batteries in it. It doesn't require cellular data. But so we have that, and we have actually one thing that should be brought up is the Red Cross, because the Red Cross is can be a lifesaver, literally. And they can also provide you with emergency kits. But because the type of emergencies that we have here, we deal more with like a lot of wildfires, unfortunately, and a lot of windy and a lot of winter snow, and you'd actually and just kind of with regards to the whole concept of you being in the universe, fortunately, like for this last power outage, I was able to actually, be in, outside, and I was able to go from my apartment to my grandparents'. However, if the universe had decided, let's have a snowstorm, and, it was snowing, like dumping buckets of snow on the ground, that would have not really been possible. And honestly, thinking about that now actually is kind of making me want to kind of rethink my emergency plan. But I think too
what would you do in that? Like, what would if it was a ton of snow and you couldn't get to your grandparent? What would you do in that situation?
Cry and throw a temper tantrum.
Oh man!
No, I would probably start. I don't know. I think if I knew that the stuff in my fridge was going to go bad, I'd start eating that whatever I could right off the bat. Not that that's the smartest thing to do, but at least it saves some of my stuff that I spent money on.
Yeah. Well, what about your warmth? Because that is a big issue. If you're all electric, how are you going to stay warm?
Well, every emergency kit needs to have an emergency blanket. That's what I would probably go to, because if my apartment's, like 50 something degrees, freezing cold, that thing will hold in body heat, and it will kind of, it'll basically make you your own heater. And so I would probably go and grab that. And honestly, I wouldn't. Ordinarily, I'd say I'd go take a hot bath, but no hot water, so can't do that.
So, it kind of comes down to is really knowing what emergency situation you're going to find yourself in your environment. Like, we haven't really talked about tornadoes too much. We haven't really talked about hurricanes. We haven't talked about tsunamis or What's the other one?
or flash floods.
Yeah.
Flash floods happen here too.
Yeah, so those are all things. What is the plan? So that's just if you break down all the emergencies, like here in San Diego, earthquakes happen all the time, and they're not that big of a deal to us because our structures are well built
You're built to support those.
Yeah, and so, but we have a plan for a tsunami that if it comes this way, and honestly, like where I live. I would be just right at the cusp of that tsunami wave hitting me, because I'm just right above high enough above sea level. I'm like, maybe I should go farther inland if an earthquake. But what would be my plan for that? And for me, I kind of carry my emergency kit with me all the time because my backpack had all the key essentials for me to survive because of how much traveling I do. And so it's essentially like I just replenish my backpack with my essentially all the emergency things I would need. Like my passport's in there and all of my documents are in there and so forth. So all my essential things that I would need to make when I need to make a fast dash to go straight to my backpack, I am good to go. And so I'm always prepared for that, but it always sucks when in that situation, like, here we go. We're gonna have this.
I don't
emergency.
have XYZ.
Yep. And so, and that is another thing to think about, and I think it being okay, being uncomfortable, because if you allow the uncomfortableness to mentally get you or to mentally impact you, it's going to affect your health.
And
you're not going to make rational
responsiveness.
Yeah. And you're not going to make rational decisions. And so that's where it's like, for me, I always put myself in uncomfortable situations so that way I stay calm, collective, and then put some reaction to it. And so one of the things that I like, because of how much travel I do and how small my suitcase and everything, I always, when I go to a hotel, my bag is always packed, ready to go. I might unpack it to get the stuff out for the next day, but it's always packed, ready to go. And it's just, if you can get into that mindset, always having that go bag, and that you have your why, which is your go bag, and then you have your options, which is the plan that you're going to implement to be successful, to get out of the emergency situation that you're in. And then what is the universe around you? Is your community ready for what you need for an emergency situation? Evan, do you have any thoughts on this? What is your thoughts on really building this plan and making this a solid plan in making sure you're successful in this?
Well, I think it's there are a few things to unpack here. No pun intended. Not totally intended. The first thing is regarding the feeling of discomfort. Just understand, for what it's worth, you are not alone.
Yep.
At all. Plenty of people are experiencing the same thing. And yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of a thought I've had, because it is comforting to me to know that other people would be going through the same struggle.
Yep.
But also, I think, honestly, just having a dedicated go bag is a really good idea. Just like pack a bag full of food, clothes, gear, papers, and make copies of emergency paperwork if necessary, even, and just like keep it in your closet, your bedroom, wherever. Now, if you're the one thing that I'm actually still kind of processing right now and thinking about is really what to do when you're on the go, because I can imagine for some, if you always kept your bag packed and you unpacked but then repacked, it might be a little inconvenient. But also, it's it also will mean that you are prepared. And in case, you decide you want to go up to, somewhere for a nice little weekend getaway or whatever. And, that just happens to be the weekend of an emergency situation.
Yep. Well, I mean, it's one of those things. You got to do what you think is best for yourself.
Exactly.
And you got to be ready. But the main thing is, don't mess up your accessibility. Just don't mess it up. Like, that's the one thing I would say is, what do you need to be successful? Is that, what assistive technology do you need to deal with the mundane of the emergency? And what tools do you need to be able to do that? In my case, so if I break that down, what do I need to be successful as a visually impaired individual and to be able to get all the resources I need? Well, one of them is hearing aids. Like, I gotta have hearing aids. So
yeah, and you got to have batteries or a charging case that's fully charged for those.
Exactly. So I have a charging case for that, and I also have a backup battery for that. And then the other component is all I really needed is a phone, hearing aids, and a cane. I pretty much can handle all of my AT things that I would need to be successful, to be able to receive information, gather data. What about you, Evan? Would there be anything else you would add into that, or would that be kind of what you would need?
Chargers and power banks, like what Jonathan had talked about in part 1.
Yep.
Solar powered power banks even would be the best.
Yep.
Or just, one really good power bank that works and is dependable. But honestly, the smartphone does it all. I mean, if I need something to read print, got it on my phone. If I need a flashlight, well, I think you should actually carry a backup flashlight.
Or really a see-me cane.
Your phone does have one.
Why do you need a flashlight? You got a see-me cane, you're good to go.
Well, if you got a see-me cane, people can see. No. Yeah.
I had to do the shameless plug.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So my stomach is starting to get a little hungry, man.
Really, yeah. But now this won't keep you, exactly prepared. But one thing you should always have on hand is a good
sandwich of the week.
And Kelvin, you seem pretty bold. So I'm actually going to call on you first. What's your sandwich? Yeah.
All right, we're gonna go traditional In-N-Out double cheeseburger.
Really?
Yeah, with no vegetables. I tell you, I'll never forget the day I was going, before I lost my vision. I would go on these little trips to go fix houses and so forth, and there was an In-N-Out, and they get us a stipend for food, and I would go to In-N-Out 3 times a day, get myself a double cheeseburger with their In-N-Out sauce called spread with cheese, and it made my tummy more happy.
I bet.
So what about you, Evan? What would be your sandwich of the week?
I'm going to actually go back to one that I announced a long time ago, only because it's on the mind. And that is a good, nice and juicy, drippy Reuben.
Okay.
I love a good Reuben sandwich. I have a bias. My grandma makes the best Reuben sandwiches.
Okay.
Opinion, not fact. Totally biased. Shameless plug for her food. Yeah. But I love those things. I'm not. That might be one of the very few times I'll eat sauerkraut. I can't stand sauerkraut otherwise, but yeah, the Reuben is my sandwich of the week. So yes. Anyway, we hope you guys enjoyed listening to this episode, and we really hope that part 2 gave you, the information you needed. And really what we want to emphasize here is, like, right now, like wherever you are, wherever you might be if you don't have at least some form of a good little plan for emergency situations, stop listening to this episode and go make one right now.
Yep.
But Kelvin, any last closing thoughts?
Well, I think one thing is, remember, we're visually impaired.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to figure out how to live beyond our challenges. So, like I always say, go live beyond your challenges.
Indeed. And of course, if you got feedback for Aftersight or any of our podcast hosts, you can always email feedback@aftersight.org or call 720-712-8856. And that hike is coming up. It's getting closer and closer each and every week. And so aftersight.org/hike to register if you haven't already. With that being said, for Aftersight and the entire family here, this is Evan Starnes and Kelvin Crosby.
Don't forget to plug in your device.